Okay, and we are back. Happy Monday, everyone. We got a great show for you tonight. Just got back, obviously, for my appearance on TimCast IRL, so that was very fun. Shout out to all the Tim Pool heads who are potentially watching this stream from there. Good to see you guys. Appreciate the support, and we got a lot to talk about tonight. So, stay tuned. And we are live tonight from the great state of Florida. It is September 25th, the year of our Lord 2023. Dang, it is almost Halloween. This summer went by way too fast. I am your galaxy-brained host, VinceDao, and we got a great show for you tonight. Got a lot of things to talk about. First and foremost, Ukraine is basically stealing from the United States at this point. 60 Minutes of all people, so this is not even far-right conservative media. Mainstream news media has actually found that Ukraine is not just getting military aid like they're saying. Oh, they need these munitions to critically rebuild their country. We are basically subsidizing the entire Ukrainian economy. The US government is more or less giving out PPP loans to Ukrainian small businesses. Okay, so meanwhile, while, you know, the debt obviously goes up in this country, but also everything tightens, the U.S. doesn't have enough money to give out to the people of East Palestine or Mali or whatever it is. We are basically subsidizing the entire Ukrainian economy. We will talk about that expose tonight. Also, Ron DeSantis and the Gavin Newsom debate on Fox News is officially happening. We'll give you a slight preview of that. A lot of other stuff to talk about, but first and foremost, we're going to open tonight with this breaking news, okay? This developing story as of just now. Hold on, let me pull the window up here, okay? We now have in Eagle Pass, Texas, just a few minutes ago, under Biden's direction, Customs and Border Protections has cut the Texas DPS barbed wire barrier that was keeping out the hordes of illegals. So, to contextualize what is going on here, I'm not going to show the images on YouTube, which, by the way, before I begin tonight's show, everyone right now, be sure to leave a like on the stream, subscribe if you are new, and as usual, if you would like to super chat to support tonight's show, or you got questions or comments on any of the things we're going to talk about, feel free to do so via these super chats. All right, plug out of the way. So, some of you guys may have seen this. If not, I'm going to describe it because it might be a little bit sensitive for YouTube guidelines, you know what I mean? So, I'm just going to kind of talk it out for you. So, as you may be familiar with, the state of Texas is now putting barbed wire on the southern border. Now, much like the buoys, is it an ideal solution? No. The state of Texas should go through and build their own wall and find the money to do it, but it certainly helps. It's certainly something of a deterrent, right? Well, as of today, the New York Post, who is supposed to be a more right-leaning magazine, so honestly, shame on them for sharing them in this way, but the New York Post has released these photos, as they report it, of migrant children getting caught in the barbed wire, and one of them's crying, and it's very dramatic. Oh my gosh, these evil Texans and their barbed wire are hurting children and you know, injuring migrants and all this different stuff. And, you know, you look at that and say, listen, is it unfortunate that people are getting hurt by barbed wire? Yes. Okay, especially kids, you know, you don't want to see that. But do you know why the barbed wire is there? Because they're not supposed to cross the border, right? You know the number one way to avoid getting injured by barbed wire? Don't walk in the barbed wire, okay? When I see a fence with barbed wire, whether that's a federal prison or a military base or just some private property I'm not supposed to go into, do you know what you do? You don't walk into the barbed wire. You don't try to climb a fence with barbed wire, right? So, you know, again, is the whole thing unfortunate? Yes. But shame on the New York Post for reporting it in this way of saying migrant children caught. No, the correct caption, the correct headline is migrant children thrown and forced into barbed wire barriers by child abuser parents, because that is obviously what is actually happening, right? The entire point of the barbed wire being there is you shouldn't cross the border. Now, if you want a type of barrier that maybe doesn't injure people in that way, the correct solution, of course, is to build a wall, but they won't do any of this. And so we're now reaching a situation, and this actually happened on Friday as well, but they're now doing it again, where Texas is building these barbed wire barriers, and then the feds continually are taking them down, and now they've just done it again. So as you can see, all these illegals are not crossing because, hey, there's a barbed wire barrier there. I'm not going to be like some of the idiotic parents in those New York Post articles. I'm not going to do that. And the federal government is now cutting down the barbed wire and letting the migrants in. This happened on Friday too, by the way. So on Friday, they did the same thing. The state of Texas came back and built them again. And you're now basically reaching, folks, this point of standoff where Texas will build the barriers, the federal government will take them down, and and then Texas, hopefully, I assume, is gonna come back and do them again. Now, as a matter of constitutional law or legality or whatever it is, I think it's pretty cut and dry to me, frankly. If the federal government's not going to secure the border, then that falls on the states, and the state absolutely has the right to do it. However, what's very interesting, and I don't think this will really happen, but realistically, I'm very curious if the issue of arresting feds ever comes into mind, okay? Because again, not saying I endorse this, okay? I'm just putting this idea out there. Hypothetically, it would be an interesting development to see if the state of Texas, and honestly, it's Greg Abbott, he would never do it. But again, this is just an interesting thought exercise, which is, when the feds come in and cut down these barriers, I would argue they're violating their own oath to uphold the Constitution, because part of the federal government's constitutional duties is to secure our country, secure the border, maintain the peace, all of that stuff. All of this stuff is happening, right? As well as federal law, as well as I would assume Texas law, all of this stuff. Be a very interesting scenario, to say the least, if the state of Texas steps in and says, federal government, if your agents come in and try to take down our legal barrier once again, we're going to call the police. And, those feds are going to be arrested. Again, not saying I endorse that. I'm just saying that would be an interesting timeline, to say the least. Let's play the video here and check out exactly what's happening. So check this out. In
Eagle Pass, Texas, where just moments ago, Customs and Border Protection cut a hole through the concertina wire that has been stretched by Texas DPS along the border there to allow migrants to come through. It was initially a group of about 60 to 70 people.
60 to 70.
To some 300 very, very quickly.
Isn't that interesting? Did you hear what he said? So it started off as 60 to 70 people, and the moment they cut it, it swelled very, very quickly. It's almost as if when you make it easier, everyone says, oh, the border wall wouldn't work because they're going to build tunnels. That's true. Some essay out there would build a tunnel. You're absolutely right about that. The whole idea is ease of access. Do you people understand that? To people who say, oh, border secure, walls don't make any difference. Yes, they do. Because as you can see, that actually played out. The social science there played out 100%. Oh, the barbed wires here? Okay, so 60, 70 people are just standing outside it and they're not going to cross it. Okay. Well, the moment they cut open the barbed wire, what happens? It's the crowd size swells to 300. Yeah, it's almost as if when you make it easier to do something, more people are going to do it. Okay, when you make it easier to access the border, when you make it easier to get into this country, what is going to happen? More people are going to try to get into the country because more people will do something that is easier than they will do something that is harder. This is common sense. This is, exactly, right? So just something to point out there. At the same time, it's pretty frivolous to point this out because we know all of this is intentional. This goes far beyond incompetence or malice. Their entire agenda here is to open the border. People say, Vince, why do they want to do that? Because isn't this bad politics for Democrats? Well, in the short term, it certainly is. Yes, you're right about that. This issue is very unpopular for the Democrats. They're probably going to lose a share of American voters over this issue, especially in states that border our southern border. However, we all know this. What's the end game here? Let all these people in. 5 years from now, give them an amnesty deal, and next thing you know, Texas is a blue state. Arizona will never turn red ever again. And people say, and by the way, it goes further than the border states, because people forget these migrants are sent to Nebraska, right? These migrants get sent to every state around the country. So, you know, we know that's exactly what's going on here. But
some women and children who were sort of in the middle of the river were picked up by, I guess it would be Texas DPS, because they're running the airboats there up and down the river, and taken out of the water and into safer ground there. But as you can see, as we have watched for the last couple of weeks, the illegal migration across the river into the United States continues with this border crossing in Eagle Pass, seeing thousands of people. And then over the weekend, we set what we believe is a new record of 11,000 people crossing into the United States in a single day. We'll keep an eye.
11,000 people in a single day. Okay, so per month, how much is that? Times 30. That's what? 130. Math. My math is failing me. My Asians. That's around 100,000 a month. Okay, that's 100,000 something a month. Multiply that by. By the way, I think the totals that used to cross our border every year were estimated to be around like 100,000, 200,000. That's how much you would get every single year. From the last time I looked at these stats, because I remember under the Trump presidency, I was trying to do some research when I was in high school. So, you get a couple 100,000 a year. That's the average that cross our border that we know about. You're now getting a couple 100,000 a month. A couple 100,000 a month. Folks, I hate to say it, but if this doesn't stop like before 2024, if this doesn't stop now, this country is going to be fundamentally transformed in a way overnight that it won't be able to recover from it. You just can't do it. You just can't do it. But, that is reality. That is the reality. 100,000 or so odd people a month. Think about that. Okay, let's also draw the contrast there. The amount of people we allow in per legal immigration every single year is around 1 million currently. And really, it's more like 500,000, because half of those 500,000 are just green card renewals very often. So let's say about 500,000. You're getting at least over 1 million illegally a year. And when you consider all the people that probably sneak through and we don't know about, we don't track, it's probably something closer to 2 million times what, 4 years of Biden? So we've let in 8 million people into this country illegally, plus the 20 or so estimated, according, I think that's the Harvard study, right? Under the Trump presidency, it was estimated there are already between 10 to 20 million illegal immigrants in America. And now, you're basically, by the end of Biden, who knows, you're basically probably going to get somewhere close to 10 million. You've added 1/3 of the entire illegal immigrant population, probably somewhere close to around there, under the Biden presidency. Absolutely unreal. So, again, central point here is I think the state of Texas needs to step up even more than they are now. It's good that they're building their own barriers, but clearly they're not enough. And the problem with the barbed wire here, folks? The problem with the barbed wire is you can very easily just cut it down again. See, the feds can just take it down. The state of Texas needs to build their own wall, okay? Finish the border wall themselves. You can find the money to do it. I know the property tax in that state is pretty ridiculous. Republican state, ridiculous property tax. Find the money, cut whatever program you need. I don't care. State of Texas needs to build a permanent wall there that can't be cut down so easily by the federal government. And if the federal government does want to take it down, they're going to need a crane. They're going to need a bulldozer. But that's honestly what needs to happen there. So anyways, there's kind of your opening update here on, again, this is a developing story. We're kind of getting this little border standoff between the federal government and the Texas government. Certainly interested to see what happens. Let's get now into our super chat. So here we go. Shane Keena for $5 says, this is where sovereign immunity should go to the wayside. If our federal government makes it harder for us to maintain our borders, forget harder, impossible. If the federal government does not maintain a border, then we should vote them out. Forget even the idea of voting them out. You know, it shouldn't even have to come down to, oh, let's elect different politicians. No, a state like Texas should just have the authority, or better yet, just take the authority for themselves to say, nope, okay, you're not going to force the border, then we're going to do it now. We're going to do it now. Because think about this for a moment as a matter of law. You think about the 10th Amendment and all this stuff. You know, it is my view that if the federal government either A, collapses, or B, just stops doing its duty, does not do its duty. You know, I think it's incumbent on a state, if you're running a state government, to just sit there and say, okay, then we're going to protect our state. Then we're going to do what it needs to be done to protect the public safety of the state of Texas, you know? And, you know, I would personally myself make an argument that it is constitutional, but even if you want to say it's not, guys, you're basically living in the purge at this point in terms of border security, okay? You know, there are certain points where law and order and just stability completely breaks down. And at that point, what are you going to do? What do you got to do? You got to take the issues of public safety in your own hands. And I'm not even saying in terms of a private vigilante. I'm just saying in terms of a state government, right? If the federal government is not securing national security, you got to take it into your own hands, you know? It's like, think about a parallel example for people who might be, oh, well, no, but Vince, the Constitution, I don't think the state of Texas should be doing what you're saying. Okay, so imagine for a moment, let's say there's a terrorist, okay? Let's say there's a terrorist on the run somewhere. A highly suspected terrorist. Like, we believe this person is a terrorist and they're running through the United States, but who knows? Okay, whatever, right? The federal government's out to get them. But the federal government's not doing a very good job and he keeps evading the feds. Or let's just say something like an escaped convict, right? You got an escaped convict. And people will bring up, oh, extradition treaties or whatever. Okay, let's just pretend for a moment that we don't have any of the, you know, okay. If you have a terrorist or an escaped convict just running through, for instance, the city of Dallas, but technically he's not wanted in the state of Texas, or technically it's extradition, I don't know, he's wanted in California or something, what are you going to do, just not arrest the guy? No, it's an issue of public safety. Just freaking arrest the guy and then deal with the rest later. That's my same logic here. I know that point probably wasn't the best analogy, but the same point I'm making here, right? Which is, worry about the quote-unquote constitutionality of all this later. I mean that sincerely. Secure your border. What precedent are you even setting? Oh, Vince, but I care about the Constitution. What bad precedent are you setting? That, oh, you know, states are gonna take border security into their own hands? What could possibly be a bad thing about that? And by the way, are we forgetting that blue states have done this already? What's a sanctuary city? What's a sanctuary state? That is states choosing to nullify federal law when it comes to immigration. That's exactly what that is. So so before you say, oh, precedent, forget your precedent, forget your quote-unquote principles. This is a crisis moment, okay? You got 1 million people coming into this country every year. You got to do something, okay? Blue states have already set the precedent that when it comes to immigration law, you can just nullify the federal government in terms of not deporting people or not reporting people to immigration authorities. So if that is the case, then I don't see the issue in precedent of red states saying that, okay, then in that case, we're not going to cooperate with the feds when it comes to securing this border either. The feds tell us not to build a barrier. Who cares? We're going to do it anyway. Nullify federal law. The feds say you can't deport people. Well, then, you know, they can come and peacefully tell us to stop, right? It's ridiculous, and it's very true. It's very true. Seriously need to just stop caring what the federal government has to say, and that's honestly the future of America. I hate to say it, you know. I want to see a national revival. You want to see a moment of national unity. But assuming we can't do that at the federal level, this is what has to happen. Red states just have to decide we're our own places now, and we're going to do what we want to do, and to the best of our ability. You know, everywhere that we hold power, we have to wield it effectively. So if we don't hold federal power effectively, then we have to wield state power effectively. I mean, it just really is that simple. Anyways, folks, let's get on to more of our super chats. Thank you for the $5, Shane. Burgundy Blue for $20. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. Vince, it's so nice to watch the show again. Want to say I don't think we should make barriers that cause physical harm to illegals. Wait, hold on here. Sorry, I lost it. Okay. that cause physical harm to illegals, especially cross not of their own volition, we should just build a wall / do catch and release. Well, I mean, look, the barbed wire is not ideal. And by the way, look at the thing. It's like 4 feet high. You know, if you're a really good pole vaulter or Olympic hurdler, or not even Olympic, you can just jump over the barbed wire. So I agree it's not the ideal solution, and I'm not saying to build a minefield, okay? Disavow, obviously, right? But, you know, a barbed wire fence is a pretty standard just thing that is a barrier, but I 100% absolutely agree. The ideal solution is you just build a wall. Now, with that said, you know what they're going to do with this, okay? And the truth of the matter is, as stupid as some of the people you're seeing on the news are, most of these illegals, most of these amigos are looking at the border, looking at the fence and saying, okay, I'm not going to walk across that, right? Like, okay, you know, let me just wait, see find a different spot, something, right? But you know what they're going to do if they build a wall. The news is going to report the same exact thing, right? Because you know someone is probably going to try to climb the wall, you know, like in Looney Tunes. And then, you know, if something happens there, God forbid, what is the news going to say? They're going to say people are getting hurt or impaled or killed on the wall too. So in fairness, they're going to say that about anything. But I overall agree, yes, that barbed wire is not the ideal solution because, you know, not only is it too thin and should you build a wall, but also it's easy for the feds. All the feds have to do, you see what they just come and cut it. And heck, at this rate, I'm sure illegals saw the feds cut it and think they're going to start cutting it too. So yeah, all around, barbed wire is not the ideal solution there, and you should just build a permanent wall, permanent barrier that can't be so easily cut through or taken down or jumped over. But, you know, this really has been the story of Texas when it comes to, you know, dealing with Biden on border security. It's better than nothing. Right, to the credit of Greg Abbott in the state of Texas, they're not just sitting there and doing nothing about all of this, but at the same time, everything they've done is a half measure. You know, remember those buoys? The buoys that I don't know if they're still there, but you know, remember those things that people are saying, oh look, the wheel in it has a spike, so it's gonna impale people. It's just ridiculous nonsense, right? But you know, I will defend the buoys in the sense that, you know, you should build something to protect the border, and these liberals are being insane about saying you should build nothing. But at the same time, like, that's really going to do anything. You see all the videos and pictures, the migrants are just walking across the buoys, or they're just walking around them, you know? But that's the problem, right? That's what Texas and Greg Abbott have done at the border. They don't have the stones to build a wall or at least put up a fence, right? But they build these little buoys, and it's like, yeah, that's better than nothing, but it's still not much, right? It's still not a whole lot of something. Same thing with this barbed wire. But, you know, like I said, I guess it's better than nothing, but the state of Texas really should just build something more permanent than that. All right, here we go. Brandon Gross for $10 says... Did it play? I'll just read it. It says, hey, Vince, how was TimCast? Did you drink some of their famous coffee? I did not drink some of their famous coffee, actually. I don't even think I asked, but I never drink coffee anymore before I go live or news hits or whatever, because it always makes me hiccup. So that's kind of a fact. If any of you guys ever become content creators or journalists or whatever, if you're going to drink coffee, always try to drink it 4 to 5 hours at least before, because it'll give you acid reflux for probably about 2 hours, and you don't want to be on a live going, which honestly has happened to me several times, but now I don't drink coffee or eat anything before the lives because it's too much of an issue. But yeah, I did not try their famous coffee, but next time. How was the podcast overall? I mean, it was fun. Their place, I mean, I'm not going to reveal details, but the place where they filmed that all is sick. Okay, it's probably the best gigantic man cave I've ever seen. So, you know, when we're rich and successful, I'm gonna have a house like Tim's, and I'm gonna have a studio like Tim's. Truly. I mean, this is very real. Do you think during Christmas this year there'll be a revolt against disavow on YouTube? There will be no revolt. We will all follow the rules, but I don't think if something like that were to happen, again, disavow, but if something like that were to happen, it wouldn't happen anytime soon. It still wouldn't, because the reality of some type of cataclysmic event like that is that you'd have to push the situation to the point where a large percentage of the masses, you know, life has gotten too bad for them to where they really feel desperate and really feel like there's nothing left. And as bad as things are getting in America, and, you know, don't get me wrong, again, disavow YouTube. Okay, I'm not saying I encourage any of this, but I could see us at some point getting to the point where you have that breaking point and you have that cataclysmic event. You know, I don't see that happening anytime soon, because like I said, things have to get a lot worse, right? Those types of events are more so of a factor of third world countries where, you know, fighting age men truly feel like they have nothing and no hope, and they have nothing better to do than to go do that. Now, with that said, people will say, oh, but Vince, America's getting like that. Not disagreeing. I'm just saying, you know, in the next few years, no. But long term, if it gets worse and we don't get the ship back on track, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. But yeah, thank you for the $10, Brandon Gross. Appreciate it very much. Burgundy Blue sends in a member chat saying, hey Vince, how was it on Tim Pool's podcast? I haven't seen the stream yet. What did you guys talk about? What did you think of Tim's opinions? Thank you for the member chat, Burgundy Blue. I mean, just go watch it. It was just fun. I mean, there was nothing super. There's nothing super epic or awesome clip wise. It was just kind of like four dudes just you know, shooting the S word for 2 hours. That's probably how I'd best describe it. I'm glad they did bring up some war subjects I'm familiar with, though. So that was interesting. But yeah, just go check it out. Thank you for the member chat, Burgundy Blue. Christian News Junkie for $5 says, Vince, which news sources do you like? Hold on, let me press the button. Can we press the button? Is it this one? Oh, wait, no, that's different. Okay. Christian News Junkie for $5 says, Vince, which news sources do you like? Fox seems to be increasingly woke, especially early morning Fox News. Epic Times seems to be good. I mean, the Epic Times are good. Fox News, just, yeah. The last straw really was Tucker Carlson leaving, but truthfully, Fox News has been going downhill for a long time before that. I mean, even under Trump, they weren't perfect, but at least you could kind of get by a lot of the times. With Tucker gone, I really don't see a reason to watch Fox News besides big time news events. Like if there's a presidential debate, if there's a town hall, okay, I get it, fine. If if there's something like that breaking news on Twitter that we just need to show, fine. But to really sit down and watch Fox News just to get your nightly news, I think that's just dumb. There's just no reason to do it anymore, frankly. In terms of news sources, I mean, people always ask me this. I don't really have that one single news source that I log on every day and I get my news from here. Truthfully, I really just go on Twitter or X or Twitter, whatever, because that's the political side of it is where all the pundits operate and whatnot. And people will say, oh, Vince, that's not credible. Obviously, you Google it if you see someone tweet something. But truthfully, that's really where I just get my Twitter from, my news from, is I follow the news pundits and the commentary pundits on Twitter. And then a lot of the news there breaks first before you even get articles. And like I said, yeah, there's fake news. There's fake news in the media too. You Google stuff to verify it. Oh, okay, news sources are reporting on this. This is real. But that's really where I get mine from. And then in terms of watching shows, truthfully, I don't think there's a reason to watch Fox anyway, even for the sitting down and watching something. Because, there's plenty on the internet, right? There's plenty of internet news and news commentary shows that I think personally are better than Fox. Truthfully, I think a lot of these internet podcasters and commentators, when you really break down what they do versus what just TV people in general do, I think that actually they're much more talented, right? It's actually much harder to do a live podcast where you just sit here in a room like this and talk to yourself basically and just carry your own show. Whereas Fox, okay, 5-minute monologue that you read from a teleprompter and then bring on the guests, all that. I'm not saying it's a bad format or hating on it. I'm just saying I think people underrate the internet sphere and how talented people are on, places like YouTube and Rumble, and how Honestly, I think their commentary is better very often. You're not limited by time constraints, so you can give more commentary. And, in terms of quote unquote information, I don't think it's any less reliable than Fox News very often. So really, in terms of stuff to watch, obviously we got our show, there's other ones, but I would generally, maybe this is a Gen Z thing, but I would generally encourage that people turn off the cable news and get their news from places on the internet a lot more, because the thing also about the internet is that it's decentralized. There's not a monopoly of 4 major networks that own all of the information, right? So you can actually get a balance, and you can actually find what you're looking for. And like I said, very often you find a lot of podcasters and commentators that I think are much more talented than people on TV. But that's just my opinion. So thank you for the $5. Christian News Junkie, I appreciate it. Omar Zapata for $2 says, great cameo on TimCast IRL. Thank you for the $2, Omar, and I appreciate you checking out that I was there. Thank you very much. All right, finishing up these super chats here. Christopher for $5 says, dumb question, but why can't the U.S. government hold foreign governments accountable for us taking their nationals? Mexico benefits from NAFTA, for example. Thank you for the $5. Well, it's not a dumb question at all, Christopher. In fact, that's a very good idea. That's a phenomenal idea. We should say, hey, Mexico, if you don't help us secure the border, we're going to pull out of NAFTA or USMCA, right? We're going to pull out of it. We're going to sanction you. We're going to tax you. Absolutely. So it's not a dumb question at all. It's just a question of, why doesn't the U.S. government do it? Why doesn't the U.S. government stand up and say, stop sending people to our border? And obviously that's because A, it's not an issue they take seriously, and B, it's something they just completely want to happen, right? So I don't think it's dumb at all. And it's totally doable too. It's totally doable. You can absolutely go to Mexico and say, we're sanctioning you, or we're pulling out of the trade deal, or whatever. It's incredibly easy to do. And Trump actually did strike an agreement, I think around 2019, to get the U.S. military to help us secure the border. They put their own troops on the border. But, I could imagine that thing is basically in the trash can at this point. So it's true. Thank you for the $5, Christopher. Dollar for $5 says, Greg Abbott is virtue signaling about the whole thing. He goes to the border and does a photo op and then slanders Biden for not securing the border. Thank you for the $5, dollar for dollar. And this is exactly my point. That really sums up Greg Abbott as a governor, right? Which is that it's not that he just sits there and does nothing. He does do something, okay? He's, in terms of the issues, one of the better Republican governors in this country. Now, I would argue that's an indictment on the state of Republican governors in this country, but it is true. Yes, Greg Abbott is one of the better governors in this country. But yes, when you look at the border, when you look at a lot of his, for instance, like COVID policies and compare them to DeSantis, where he wouldn't really go the extra mile when it came to mask mandates and jab mandates that other red states did. This is the problem with Greg Abbott, is that he's good, but he's not great, right? So when it comes to the border, he will do something. It's not like he just sits there and ignores it. He'll go to the border, he'll build stuff at the border, but he won't take the next step to truly secure the border of Texas. It's like, oh, let's put these buoys here. Okay, well, I'm glad there's something there. Yeah, you're right, Greg. To put anything there and piss off the federal government, yes, it did take some degree of guts. But, you could have done a lot more. So this is true, and this is how I've always felt about Greg Abbott. Those of you who have been on this channel for a while know I wanted to primary him, right? I was telling people, go vote for Don Huffines. Obviously, that failed. Obviously, Greg has done enough to be a popular governor. I'm not denying that. But when you really break it down, this is true. This is the legacy of Greg Abbott. It's not that he's straight up bad, right? I'm not saying he's Asa Hutchinson levels of just total rhino, but a lot of the things that Fox News will praise him for doing, people don't really sit down and realize, hey, but why isn't he doing this, right? Oh, Greg Abbott is building barbed wire barriers that are 4 feet tall and buoys. Okay, that's good. But why doesn't he just build a wall? Same thing with the COVID stuff. I pointed this out too. It's like, so let me compare that to Florida, right? Just to do this whole thing, right? Because when it comes to COVID, DeSantis wasn't perfect in the beginning, but in terms of the later stuff with the mandates, he's probably the best in the country, right? So a lot of the mask and jab mandates in Florida said, not only can the public not mandate these, but also a lot of private entities can't do it. And if you, for instance, if you're a university, if you're a public university, and I think even some private universities, if you take any money from the state, you cannot do mask mandates, and you certainly can't do the jab mandates, right? Whereas in Texas, it was almost that. You know, it's like you can't do jab mandates, but mask mandates are okay, right? He almost was there. He almost did it. And this is, again, Greg Abbott's entire history. Now, is he a bad governor? No. I wouldn't say he's a bad governor. But when you consider how pivotal the state of Texas is, and, you know, let's say we hit the point in 10 to 15 years where Texas becomes a swing state, because obviously we know that whole story, right? We know how it's changing and all of that. Greg Abbott's failures to truly go the extra mile could now come back. You know, now he'll be remembered as a decent governor. Fine, whatever. But think 10, 15 years from now, when that amnesty for all of these illegal immigrants is being considered. And who's that? What state's that going to affect the most? Obviously, is Texas, right? That will turn Texas blue overnight. You may look back and say, if only Greg Abbott did a little more to secure that border, we would still be a red state right now. You know what I'm saying, right? In terms of education, because obviously, you know, it's not just immigration that's killing Texas politically. A lot of it is, you know, the younger generations and UT Austin and all that stuff. If his DEI policies would have gone one step further, if he didn't just ban CRT, but also banned all the DEI related stuff like, you know, some other states are trying to do now, maybe we'd be a little bit better off. I think ultimately that's how Greg Abbott is going to be remembered. And that's my concern. That really is my concern, is that I hope none of that plays out in reality. But if Texas ever does become blue, I think you're going to be able to go back and say, wow, if only Greg Abbott did the extra mile, we wouldn't be here. So that's why I think it is relevant to still criticize him. And why, you know, if this were 2008, Greg Abbott as governor of Texas, what he's doing now, it would all be fine. But you know, you consider where Texas is now, and you consider, you know, that it's on the tipping point almost, and we're trying to bring it back. You can't settle for half measures. And this is the problem. This is the problem with Governor Abbott, you know? So that's the way it is. Thanks for the super chats, guys. Again, if you would like to super chat to support tonight's show, feel free to do so. But we will move on here. We got through 2 stories, so we're doing very well on time tonight. Okay, spent 38 minutes. No, 1 story. Spent 38 minutes on 1 story and 1 super chat. You know, thank gosh we're not on TV, because we have all the time that we want. But let us move on here to another expose as of
American taxpayers.
So this was actually reported yesterday. Ukraine is basically stealing money from us. And you're probably saying, Vince, I already knew that. You know, that's not a surprise to me. Well, you probably have thought, though, that the money, as corrupt as a lot of it is, you're probably thinking it's military-industrial complex type of stuff. Hey, we're quote-unquote giving weapons to Ukraine. Hey, bro, we're not nation building there. What are you talking about? We're just trying to defend democracy. We're just trying to keep Ukrainian democracy sovereign from that evil Russian Putin. Meanwhile, of course, if you look into the recent history of Ukraine, the CIA literally sponsored a coup there in 2014 to overthrow the democratically elected government. But shut up, bro. It's democracy. What, do you not support democracy, bro? Anyways, point being, we were told this is what it was about, right? Turns out, now this is reported by 60 Minutes, okay? So keep that in mind. This is CBS. This is not some far-right America First news outlet. This is not even like the RFK Jr. anti-establishment left type of angle. No, this is 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes has discovered that the U.S. is financing more than weapons in Ukraine. The U.S. government is now buying seeds and fertilizer for farmers. We're literally just subsidizing their economy. They're buying seeds and fertilizers for farmers, paying the salaries. We're paying the salaries, folks, of 57,000 first responders in subsidizing small businesses. Check it out. Here's the 60 Minutes report right here.
American taxpayers are financing more than just weapons. We discovered the US government's buying seeds and fertilizer for Ukrainian farmers and covering the salaries of Ukraine's first responders, all 57,000 of them.
We're covering the salary. Oh, cute dog, by the way. We're covering the salary of every single first responder in Ukraine. I mean, why not just subsidize the entire country at this point? Which is basically what they're doing. That's basically what they're doing, right? And, you know, don't get me wrong, right? Obviously, I'm not saying I'm for quote-unquote big government socialist economic policies. But dang, wouldn't it be really nice if, for instance, okay, I get it. Vince, first responders are paid by the government anyway. Okay, fine. Wouldn't it be nice if your small business just got random money from the government? From your American government? Because if you're a small business in Ukraine, you get free money. Imagine being a farmer. Hey, farmers in this country, do they really get jack from the government? No, they have to go do their own thing, do their own work. Imagine that. Imagine getting your own. Well, you're not Ukrainian, right? That's your problem. How dare you? It's your fault for expecting that the American government work for America, obviously. Okay, anyways, let's continue while looking at this cute dog.
That includes the team that trains this rescue dog, named Joy, to comb through the wreckage of Russian strikes looking for survivors.
Why can't Ukraine pay for this? I don't know.
And the US also funds the divers, who we saw clearing unexploded ammunition from the country's rivers to make them safe again for swimming and fishing. Russia's invasion shrank Ukraine's economy by about a third. We were surprised to find that to keep it afloat, the US government is subsidizing small businesses.
Where's our subsidies, guys? Yeah, if you're Ukrainian, it's great. If you're American, you don't get nothing. And let's put up the contrast here. Let's not forget this. Do you know how much the survivors of Maui got who lost? Remember these people. They lost their homes. They lost their cars. They lost everything they had. Millions of dollars worth of assets burned to the ground. What was the response to that? The federal government gave them $700. Joe Biden gave them $700. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, people's entire lives are being subsidized by the US government. Something about that is obviously backwards. And of course, the most condescending part of it all is honestly not even Joe Biden. It's the neocons. It's the Mike Pences of the world who sit out there on that debate stage and talk about how, you know, on one hand, they'll talk about how fiscally conservative they are. We need to cut down entitlements. We need to cut down the budget, blah, 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 this and that. But then when it comes to arming Ukraine, what does Mike Pence say? What does Mike Pence literally say? He says that we're not giving enough funding to Ukraine, right? We're not arming Ukraine enough. That's literally what he says. That's literally what he says. And his excuse is, oh, we can do both at the same time. You know, we can nation build in America and Ukraine at the same time. That's a false dichotomy by populist extremists. Well, clearly not. Because I only see one country being built here. I only see one economy being built. I only see the American government caring about one country, and that's not this country. So it's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, to all the Ukraine simps who every time I talk about Ukraine, you guys always make every single excuse. I want you all to try to justify this. Please explain to me, because, you know, this has nothing to do with the immediate defense of Ukraine. You could argue, oh, these things are necessary. These things are essential. Yes, to rebuild Ukraine. But you told me we were not nation building. You told me this is just, oh, they need this aid to just go defend their country. What is subsidizing small business? What does subsidizing a designer clothing store have to do with defending the immediate safety of democracy in Ukraine, quote unquote? What's the angle there? What are we doing there? Okay? And these people are so condescending every single time. They tell me, oh, we're doing this in American interests. Really? American interests. So it's in America's interest to subsidize shopping malls in Ukraine. Again, while the residents of Maui get $700. Does that make sense? What's the American interest? I don't understand it. And by the way, for the whole crowd, this is kind of unrelated, but for the whole crowd who constantly comes to me every single week saying, Vince, it's in the American interest to do what we're doing in Ukraine right now. Really? Because the way I see it, we actually have reached the worst possible foreign policy outcome of all of this, which is Russia has now been backed into a corner because of, the sanctions and the way we've pushed them to this war, by the way, when you look at the history of NATO expansion and all of that. And we've now reached the worst possible foreign policy outcome, which is a Russia-China alliance. That's what's happened now, okay? It's not going to happen. It has happened. How is that in America's interest? Vince, we're making Russia and China form an alliance to defend American interests. You just don't get it. You're just not pragmatic about our foreign policy. So increasingly, I don't get this. Increasingly, it gets harder for these people to defend. And don't get me wrong, while I don't always agree, I could have at least understood some of the opening arguments early on in the war that these people made as to why Ukraine needed this money. Blah, blah, blah. We have to defend our ally. This, that, blah, blah, stop Putin. He's our adversary. Again, I don't agree with that logic, but I could understand it. But at this point, how can you justify subsidizing shopping malls in Ukraine? How can you justify knowingly and just sitting by as Russia meets with China and decide, oh, yeah, this is good. No, this is good. This is a good thing. Absolutely insane. Okay, absolutely insane. But welcome to the United States, right? What can we say? Anyways, Omar Zapata for $2 says, "Build back Ukraine better." That is indeed exactly what is happening. Okay, that's exactly what this is. So, All right. With that said, folks. As we close out tonight's stream, let me first take a sip of water, and then we got one last thing to talk about, okay? And it's time for us to get philosophical here. Because we got to talk about... Excuse me. I'm going to blow my nose real quick. Okay, highly professional. Okay. Like I said, philosopher caps on. We got to talk about the rise of conservatism in Gen Z. And I've been talking about this for a while. I've given my little thesis dissertation on this 100 times, but there's new additions to my theories here, okay? Because as I've been talking about, just to summarize for people who forget or weren't here, to reemphasize my central Gen Z point, as much as you see on TV, oh, the younger generations are lost. Oh, they're a bunch of liberal hippies. Look at this idiot, blue-haired feminist on campus reform. As I have so often brought up, the younger generations are much more conservative. As, again, I'm a junior in college, okay? I am here. I'm telling you right now, especially among young men, much more conservative than a lot of people realize, okay? And the issue, as I've very often said, is that a lot of the young men who are quote-unquote natural conservatives, right? These are your frat guys, your finance bros, your Tate fans, that just coalition plus the kind of normal political conservative people. A lot of them don't vote. I've been over this a million times. I've talked about this a lot. But like I said, I have a new theory as to why you're starting to see this realignment, okay? Because I've been asking myself, because like I said, I grew up in this generation. And in the past 2 years or so, you've really started to see something shift where I'm just noticing a lot more right-wingers, specifically right-wing men. And that does translate with the polls we've seen showing, hey, Gen Z men actually are majority conservative and Gen Z women are liberal, but why aren't Republicans outreaching to Gen Z men, all this stuff? But I now have a theory. Okay, I now have a theory as to why you're starting to see this realignment among young people. Okay, and I'm going to summarize it here for you. Which is this. It says, I call this my brick in the wall hypothesis, and I'll tell you why in a second. But it says, the defining characteristic of Gen Z is whether you rebelled against your parents or your teachers. Left-wing kids are people who hate their parents and rebelled against their parents, but like their teachers. And right-wing kids love their parents, but cause problems with their teachers. Think about that for a second. Okay? And all you Gen Zers out there, fireside chat, I want you to listen here very carefully. Is that not so true? Is that not the truest thing you have heard all day? Which again, and think about the stereotypes of this for a second too. Your average blue-haired feminist, I went to school with plenty of them. I know them. I know how they are, okay? Your average blue-haired feminist, the reason they're doing it is fundamentally because they hate their parents, and very often they hate their fathers. They hate their fathers more than anything on this planet, right? Total daddy issues. We know the stereotype, but because of that, they're basically pushed into the hands of the school system, because consider what the school system is teaching, right? Basically, you have this divide right now where the school system is trying to pull kids away from what their parents believe. Because think about that in this country. A lot of parents, even the ones that are not super political, even the ones that are not avid Republicans, and that was plenty. I grew up in California, plenty of parents like this, but just think all of this gender stuff is a bit much, and the far left is a bit crazy, and men and women still should be kind of semi-traditional in terms of their gender norms and stereotypes and all that stuff, right? The school system is pulling them away, okay? So I've noticed this very often, and I noticed this with all the feminist kids I knew growing up, the crazy feminist girls. All their teachers liked them, and they liked all their teachers, especially the liberal teachers, obviously. There were some conservative teachers that I remember were like, what's wrong with this girl? But you know what I mean. But every single one. In fact, I would argue you will be remiss to really find a single crazy leftist. I'm not talking about the kid who just thinks they're a Democrat or whatever. I'm talking about the pierced up, emo, crazy looking, you know what I mean, that stereotype. You will seldom find one of them that has a good relationship with their parents. Because what they are doing and what that is about is a teenage rebellion. Now, all of us as teenagers have rebelled against something. Okay, it's just a matter of, and my thesis I'm getting to here is it's a matter of what did you rebel against? Because if you are a left-wing kid, I know historically all these hippies thought they were fighting the power. But if you're a left-wing kid in Gen Z, what power are you fighting? You say, oh, look, I'm a leftist because I'm standing up to power. No, you're not. The very school system you go to is ran by leftists. The very institutions, everything in this country is ran by your side. When you take a job, you're gonna take a job at a corporation that pushes the exact social agenda. So what are you rebelling against? What are these people fighting the power rebelling against? Not the system. No, it's their parents. Because on average, very often you'll find this with the crazy kids. Usually their parents, even if they're not even hardcore Republicans, maybe are a little bit more traditional. Maybe don't think, oh, Jenny, I don't think you should, cut off your breasts and dye your hair, green, right? And it becomes a rebellion against them. 100% of the time, you will find the hardcore leftist kids issues with their parents, love the school system. Their teenage rebellion is against their parents. That's why they're rebelling in the liberal direction, because on average, your average parent in this country is a little bit more socially conservative than their kids. That's just how it goes very often, right? On the flip side, again, like I said, right-wing kids on average tend to have a strong relationship with their parents, but cause problems with their teachers. How freaking true is that? Because I've met plenty of leftists with, hardcore, like Christian Republican families that huge issues with their parents. But even right-wing kids with left-wing parents, very often you don't even find it to be a super big issue, right? It maybe makes it awkward. I don't know any right-wing kids with liberal parents where it's driven them out of the house, whereas I know plenty of stories on the flip side, right? So very often you will find right-wing kids on average have good parents, have good relationships with their families and are fine, but they cause problems with where? The liberal school system, their teachers. And I'm not just talking about, oh, you're the conservative kid in class who chose to speak facts and the teacher doesn't like it. That's one part of this story. But I'm thinking even bigger picture on the archetypes and the stereotypes here, okay? Think about the energetic young boy who the school system says has quote-unquote ADHD. Why do they say he has ADHD? Because he has too much youthful masculine energy. Yeah, there's a reason he can't sit still in class, because boys at that age are not supposed to sit still and learn how to repeat processes. They want to go build stuff and break stuff and all of that. And all of those things are very naturally right-wing, right? Natural masculine tendencies tend to be kind of right-wing, but the school system doesn't like that, right? Very often, you know the story here, right? The ADHD kids, the ADHD boys especially, school system can't stand them. Good relationship with their parents very often will turn out stereotypically to be a young right-wing kind of boy, right? See the point that I'm getting at here? I think this is the firmest and frankly most important social science theory that's ever been created. Okay? I think I should write a book about this. I was literally just thinking about this yesterday, and wow, that is so true. And, I think this is almost 100% of the case. Okay? And people say, Vince, does this apply to you? Yes, absolutely. Because, growing up, I never had serious problems with my parents at all. Like, literally at all, obviously, you have a few arguments, discipline a few times, but, literally like nothing. I never had any serious issues, right? I did have a lot of issues growing up with was teachers, okay? And for me, it wasn't even because I was a bad kid. Now that I'm thinking back to my own life, I was never a bad kid. I never, was a bully or got into fights or anything like that. But the times I did cause problems with teachers is because I would, and I'm not even saying this to brag. I was kind of a smart kid growing up. Like, I was usually like the smartest in the class and all that. Again, that's not a brag. I'm just explaining the situation, right? So with teachers, very often, even before politics was a thing in my brain, I would question what they did. Like, I remember in 5th grade, I had this like female middle-aged science teacher, quote unquote. It was the teacher that taught us science. And I remember I got 100% on all the quizzes. I knew everything, obviously. But she gave me a bad grade because she said my notebook wasn't organized. She said my notebook wasn't organized. Oh, yeah, all the material, but your notebook's... So I go to her and say, why does it matter if my... No, I don't remember exactly what I said. It's been a long time. But I basically said, why does it matter if my notebook is organized? This has nothing to do with the content material. What does that matter, right? Caused problems with that teacher. 7th grade, same exact thing. I remember I was in English class, and there was this assignment where you had to draw stuff, right? This is one of those stupid whatever. But I got a C on the assignment. I got a C on the assignment because the teacher said that my drawings weren't good. And that was a spectacle. I wish I recorded that at that time, because, we could go in now and listen to that. It'd be quite funny. But I go to this teacher and say, this is an English class. Why am I getting graded down on the drawings? I mean, I drew it, I colored it in. I'm not a good artist. I'm sorry, my drawings do suck. But I did the required assignment. I colored it, I drew it in. Why are you grading me so harshly in an English class because my art is bad? That caused a lot of problems. Okay, so I would do stuff like that. I did the stuff like that all the time. So even though I was like I was a smart kid, I never caused problems with teachers in terms of behavior. I did rebel and question teachers quite a bit. And then look where I turned out. I turned out to be conservative in the end, like almost everyone who caused problems with teachers growing up. So I'm going to read live chat now and kind of analyze what people think about this, because I think this is the truest thing I've ever come up with on this channel. I think this is the most important thing we've ever discovered, is that it's almost 100% accuracy in Gen Z. Whether you're conservative or liberal depends on, was your teenage rebellion against the school system or against your parents? Because if it was against your parents, you're a leftist. If it's against school, you're a conservative, even if you didn't know it at the time. Even if it had nothing to do with politics. Even if it was just you being a crazy, energetic young male who caused too many problems for the school system and had quote-unquote ADHD. Almost all the time, those kids tend to be the right-wingers. So this is very important. But let us take a look here. Dollar for $2 says, my 10th grade history teacher was him. I have good story. Well, we'd be interested to hear that story, to say the least. Been there, Vince. Yeah, exactly. But how many left-wing kids ever question teachers? Or kids who turned out to be left-wing? Very rarely. Because they don't have the guts to do it. They don't even have the social confidence to do it, okay? It takes freaking guts to stand up to a teacher. It does, all right? Especially when you're... Now, in retrospect, it's like, okay, wow, This person is basically a loser, okay? Especially in California, your average teacher. You drive a Prius. You're a mediocre person, hence why you're here in English class trying to teach me about, black feminist theory or whatever it was. why should I be scared of you? But when you're at that age, yeah, it's a scary thing to do, right? And to some degree, it kind of requires a degree of testosterone, especially for boys, and leftists just don't have that. And before you say that I'm just joking about that, no, it's actually a scientific fact. There's a high correlation between testosterone and disagreeability, right? They've studied this. Higher testosterone males are more likely to stand up and question things or say things out loud, stand up to people, cause problems, right? This is true. This is why left-wing boys never have the guts to do that stuff, even when it's not political, you know? This is why every kid who, in an intellectual way, causes problems with teachers is almost always a right-winger. And I would even argue very often that's true of the boys who just have behavior problems too. Not always. Because sometimes you're just an a-hole. Here, let me be clear about this. Sometimes you're just an a-hole. Because people will say, what about people who rebelled against both their parents and their teachers? In that case, you're just a menace. You're just a menace to society. I don't know how to classify you politically. But what my point is that for the people who were good with their parents but only caused problems in school, almost 100% of the time, they're conservative. Almost 100% of the time, right? And then fundamentally, what is the rebellion against the modern school system, especially for a young boy, about? Well, it's a rebellion against this gynocentric society, right? It's the liberal system, liberal indoctrination, all of that. But I'd argue it goes further than that. It's a rebellion against the kind of feminist gynocentric framework of our school system itself. You know, because I'd argue the way our school system is crafted is not really meant for boys. This is why they diagnose so many young boys with quote-unquote ADHD at a young age, because boys are not supposed to learn like that. Boys are not supposed to just be put in a classroom and taught how to repeat a process for 6 hours a day. You know, that's not how we're supposed to learn. You know, we're supposed to be active, first of all. We're also supposed to be creative, right? We kind of build things, we break things, whatever it is. But this whole repeat process, the feminine brain very often can handle it better than the masculine brain. This is why they diagnose so many boys with ADHD. Some girls have ADHD, sure, quote unquote, but you know, what's the ratio there? It's almost always boys. Why is it almost always boys? Because, like I said, it's not because ADHD is... I mean, honestly, if you want true belief, I don't really believe it's a real thing. I think it's just some kids are energetic and society wants to put them on drugs. But even if you want to believe it's quote unquote a real thing, this is why it's disproportionately a thing in boys and not girls, because and that's why boys have the behavior problems in school and act out the most in school. And you know, most of the time your high school dropouts, the you know, the curve. So some of the smartest kids on average, the smartest people are men. So the highest IQ of the curve are men, but also why the lowest IQ. But also, you know, I'm sure if you did a study of the amount of high school dropouts, it's probably mostly men. It's probably mostly men that truly get left behind by the system. And why is that? Again, like I said, because the system is gynocentric. So that's a very complicated way. I know I'm getting like, I'm probably losing some people with the like just how abstract I'm trying to get here. But this is all to say that inherently, you rebelling against your teachers and the school system in school, this is why I'm making all the argument that it's an inherently right-wing thing to do, hence why so many kids who do it turn out to be right-wing. Okay, does that all make sense? I hope that all makes sense. This is what I'm saying. I need to write a book on this. So we can actually like organize it front to back and explain my full like theory on this and prove why it's true. But I hope people understand what I'm actually saying. Okay. But anyways, Real Texan Politics for $10. Thank you very much. Real Texan Politics says, little late to the party here. Have you discussed the recent Canadian Parliament gaffe where they gave a standing ovation to a Ukrainian Nazi veteran? Classic Canadian politics moment. I didn't talk about it on the show tonight because it's Canada. I will comment no further, but I did see that on Twitter today. So basically they had like an Azov battalion soldier and they gave him a standing ovation. Well, can't be surprised. But you know, honestly, I'm not surprised though, because when it comes to Ukraine, they don't care about morality. They don't care about anything. Democracy? No. The Ukraine suspended their elections and they cheer it, right? You know? Azov Battalion, the high amounts of neo-Nazis in the Ukrainian military, they don't care about that, right? So in a way, it's actually very fitting, because no one in the West disavows no one in the West that is leading this fight cares that the Azov Battalion is full of Nazis or any of that stuff, right? They only care that Russia loses the war, and that's all it is to them. But they pretend to be these moral crusaders about it when there's nothing moral about their crusade, right? So, you know, long story short, it actually, in my opinion, is fully consistent with the rest of the Ukraine stuff. It's actually very unsurprising, arguably in many ways. Dollar for $2 says, I rebelled against school by graduating at 16. So true. Thank you for the $2, dollar for dollar. And, you know, this is very real. All right, with that said, folks, this wraps up our main stories for tonight. So we're now going to go on fully to super chats for 10 or 15 or so minutes, and then I got a bunch of work to do. I got a bunch of homework to do. But feel free to do so. Like I said, next 10 minutes, we're fully open here for questions, comments, Q&A, anything you want to send in, thoughts on my whole brick in the wall hypothesis. By the way, let me explain why I call it the brick in the wall hypothesis, okay? It's a reference to the song Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd. You know that song? We don't need no education, right? And the whole song is about basically teenage rebellion against the school system. And the reason I relate to that, and I think it applies to modern conservative youth, is that's basically us. In many ways, that's basically us. And people in politics will have a tendency to make things too political. And so, yes, I am obviously referring to the fact that, yes, if you're a conservative kid in high school, you probably have a bunch of teachers that hate you and you have all these issues back and forth. And that's true. But like I kind of explained earlier, it goes even deeper than that, right? If you're just kind of a young man who wants to be a young man and learn in a masculine way and not, you know, like I said, have to submit to the gynocentric school system, hence why you cause so many problems at school, that, yeah, you're part of this too. You know what I mean? You're part of this too. If you're a frat guy who remember how the F Joe Biden chant started? People forget this. It didn't start at NASCAR. People forget that. It continued to NASCAR. It didn't start there. It started at a college football game because the Virginia Tech student section started chanting it. And the reason they were chanting it, people forget this too. The reason they were chanting it, obviously Biden is a bad president, but the real sentiment, and I know this because that's when I started college too, the real sentiment behind that chant wasn't even super political. It was because that's when everything had reopened. We could party again. We could go to football games again, all this stuff. We didn't have to wear our masks or any of this stuff. And the fact that like college was back, that was what that chant was about, right? F you, Joe Biden. We're not going to wear a mask. We're not going to social distance. We are going to, go to our football games and our tailgates and parties and all that. That's how the F Joe Biden chant started. People forget that, you know? And why? Why did that start? Because fundamentally, again, a gynocentric system wanted to say, oh, we have to be scared of the air. No, college kids, you can't hang out. You can't go to football games. You can't go to tailgates because we have to all be scared of the air. Everyone wear your mask, guys. Everyone wear your mask, guys, right? And then who rebelled against that and ultimately basically gave it literally the middle finger and was cussing it out in gigantic football stadiums? High energy young men. Testosterone, right? So this is what I'm saying. This is why I'm saying we are the other brick in the wall. Okay? We are the Pink Floyd song. This is true. You know? And if you guys remember, early 2021 when the schools started to reopen again, remember how kids were just being crazy? Boys especially were being crazy. Remember devious licking? Remember how they were like destroying bathrooms and doing all this crazy stuff? I, like most people at the time, thought to myself, well, that's wrong. You know, that and by the way, I'm not encouraging or endorsing any of this behavior. I'm just saying at the time I thought, all these freaking kids, why can't people control themselves? Why can't people act normal? The heck's wrong with all you guys? But then I thought, like, what really was happening there? What was happening there was that teenage angst and maybe a little bit of anger and just, you know, young men. You kept them bottled up for so long. and they just let out their energy. And they were stealing signs, and they were, destroying urinals and just like ripping doors off their hinges. And it was, you really think about it now, it was kind of like I said, kind of a teenage rebellion against the current order of things. And now what is it translating to? Well, now those kids who were in high school are now in college, they're freshmen, and those are the type of people that a few weeks ago I was interviewing, and they were saying F Joe Biden into the mic and just like going, giving people hope for the future. This is a very complicated theory, but it all comes together, okay? I think COVID lockdowns, I think a lot of different factors have put us to this point. And that's why you're seeing kind of an increase in Gen Z right-wing sentiment, and that's why you're seeing these chants. And we did a video today on the school walkout against the trans bathroom policies. That's what it all boils down to, and that's why I don't think all hope is lost for the future, because you have this huge proportion of disaffected young men who, once they are properly mobilized and put into the right place, and you harvest their energy and put it towards really changing things, it's over. It's over for the other side, like sincerely, because they cannot handle that, right? The peacefully speaking, of course, I'm just talking about a political sense, but truly the energy of fighting age young men, if properly harnessed, and it is there, goes a long way. You wonder why the school systems work so hard to suppress the energy of fighting age young men? That's the exact reason. So anyways, let's get caught up here on these super chats. Jenna for $2 says, you did great on TimCast. Hope you get more subs. Thank you, Jenna, for the $2. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the compliment. Truly flattering. I'm blushing right now, for real. All right, Burgundy Blue for $5 says, it wasn't even an Azov guy. It was actually a 98-year-old Nazi who was a Ukrainian nationalist and fought against the Soviets during World War II. So that's even worse then. That's even worse. Because he made it sound like, oh, they accidentally brought an Azov battalion guy to the ceremony. No, they literally just had a World War II Nazi veteran. But guys, he's against Russia, so it's okay. That actually makes me laugh. That physically makes me laugh. That is insane. Gosh. Okay, Ron Jones says average age of a soldier is 23. Exactly. Well, the average age of the Vietnam soldier was 19, but you're right. Thompson Spence says ABC/Washington Post did a poll that did not filter out people who aren't registered to vote. That's actually very interesting. Did not filter out people who are not registered to vote. So yes, on one hand, that means, is it necessarily the best indicator of how the election's going to go? No, we need to get those people to vote. This is what's very interesting, okay? Let's talk about that, actually. There's a poll today showing Trump beating Biden by 10 points. Now, it does not filter out for likely voters, which means, they just basically polled anyone, which of course means that, it's probably not really that margin. However, what it does go to show, this poll showed Trump beating Biden by 10. It showed Trump beating Biden among young voters by 20. Okay, guys? And Trump was beating Biden among younger voters by 20 points. Okay? Now, maybe it's a sampling bias. I get that. And you may say, and by the way, 100% true. The poll is inaccurate because it does not poll for likely voters. However, at the same time, it does go to show what I've been saying on the channel for so long, which is that there are so many natural Republicans in this country who would vote for you. Whether that's just, a bunch of people who like Trump but don't vote, but especially, like I said, younger people, okay? These younger people who are actually Republicans, but they just are not super into politics. But when they are asked for this poll, again, I'm not saying it's accurate. There could be a huge sampling bias, but let's subtract that by 20. Let's say Trump and Biden are tied among young voters in terms of just, again, not likely voters, but just people who hypothetically are eligible to vote. Let's say Trump, again, take away that 20-point lead and just say they're tied. Heck, go 30 points. Say Trump is losing to Biden by 10 points among young people. that margin is not a lot. Right? Because what Democrats have to do among young people is run up the margin, right? It's one of those kind of demographics that you have to go crazy, right? Win by 30, 40 points. 10 points? That's nothing. And again, that's giving them 30 points. Let's just subtract the 20. Let's say Trump and Biden are tied among young voters. Trump wins that election easily because Trump does a lot better with old voters. He's a Republican, obviously. But of course, what's the problem here? The problem here is most of the people sampled in that poll probably won't vote. Okay? But again, it does go to demonstrate what I've been trying to tell people, which is the young Gen Z is not nearly as liberal as people say. Look at that poll. 20 points. And again, you may say sampling bias. I get it. But that counts for something. That shows the fact that he's up by 20 in any poll among young people shows, hey, maybe even if Gen Z is maybe still kind of liberal, there's no way they can be super far gone to where Trump in this sample comes up by 20. That's impossible. And it's not even just about young people. Trump beating Biden by 10 among non-likely voters. Why are they non-likely voters? Why aren't they likely voters? Because the Republican Party does not have a turnout machine to get these people to vote. That's why we lost 2020, among other reasons, obviously. But that could have got us over the hill in 2020. I truly believe that. 2022 especially, that's the real reason. And if we do lose 2024, that's going to be the same reason, is that we do not have a turnout machine for these people. There are way more Americans on our side than we realize. The problem is we only pander to the hardcore base of people who constantly vote. And that used to work. It used to work to only campaign to politically active people. But now that the voting system works the way it does with election month and the Democrats basically just harvest ballots from random people for an entire month, we need to do the same. We need to harvest ballots from people who, hey, they might not care too much, but they're on our side. Go to the small town, go to the frat house, go to the trade worker place, the welders, whatever it is. The people who, you see someone in a pickup truck, you see a white guy in a pickup truck, are you registered to vote? Literally, just go to your stereotypical demographic group, and that's how you can win in 2024, and it would be the easiest thing ever. But again, we don't do this. And meanwhile, the Democrats go to any demographic base they think is on their side. They're like, are you registered? Vote. Okay, your ballot. Give me your ballot. Go. Okay. And we don't do the same thing. That's the problem. That's why we lose. You're pronouncing Gianna's name wrong. Omar for 2. Well, she's never corrected me on that. I thought it's Jenna. Okay, well, anyway. Okay, Gianna. Thank you for the $2, Omar. Appreciate it. All right, last call for super chats, guys, and then we got to call it a night. So, last call here. We'll go to 9:20. So everyone close out your tabs. All right, last call for super chats here. Gianna for $10. Thank you very much. Gianna says ADHD and ADD are usually overdiagnosed to drug children. Exactly what it is. Making them complacent to propagate the government and its agenda. Stay masculine and fight the suppression. Masculinity will always be hot. That's from Gianna. Thank you very much for the $10. I appreciate it. This is very real. And yeah, they're never medicating my kids. Okay. I mean, realistically, my kids will probably be homeschooled for the early years of their life, so it's not going to matter anyway, but whatever. They're never medicating my kids, okay? And it's funny, I remember I got into a debate with a parent over that once. And I was like, no, I'm never medicating my kids. If they say my kid is a problem, then I'm pulling them out of school and homeschooling them. Although I'm probably going to do that anyway, honestly. But if I were in that situation, I'd say, I don't care what problem they have. They were in first grade, and the idea of putting them on, it's basically narcotics, right? Like, basically, I'm pretty sure the actual drug that they use for ADHD very often isn't it literally it's basically meth, right? It's basically like methamphetamine, I'm pretty sure, or cocaine or something. It's basically what you're giving them. And you're going to put my first grade child on that? I will crawl over broken glass to find an alternative solution before I would ever give my first grade son hard drugs because they quote unquote can't focus in school. AKA some teacher doesn't know how to actually stimulate their young male brain correctly. It's satanic. It's legitimately satanic what they do with the ADHD whole industrial complex here. And by the way, Do you know how easy it is to get those prescriptions? Like, literally, it makes you ask a lot of questions, right? Why is this? People say, no, ADHD is real, Vince. Okay, even if it is, it's very often overdiagnosed, because all that has to happen, I remember this from school, if one teacher says Jimmy doesn't behave in class, which could be for any reason, he can't focus in class. Yeah, maybe because he's bored, maybe because again, the school system is gynocentric and not meant to appeal to the male brain, hence why they can't sit here and learn math for 6 hours and learn how to do the freaking times table, whatever, right? Anyways, if one teacher says this kid can't behave, that's all you need to get an ADHD prescription. Literally. That's all you need. Can't focus in class? Per your account? All right, ADHD. Okay. Diagnose? Medication? Here's your Adderall. Here's your whatever they give him. It's disgusting. It's evil. It's pure evil. It's pure evil. Andrew M for $2 says, why do you think women tend to be liberal? Emotional? I think that's part of it. That's part of it. There's a couple different reasons. I think one, yes, the reason why women on average, now there obviously are conservative women as there are liberal men, but why is it a general trend that women lean more liberal? I'd say it comes down to two reasons. And both of these things are scientifically true, so don't come at me, okay? And again, understand we're talking about on average here, okay? It's like, yes, there's some women that are stronger than men, but it doesn't mean that them as a gender are stronger. Like the same argument, right? Same sense, we're physically different, we're also mentally different, okay? With that precedent established, the reason why statistically there tend to be more female Democrats than male Democrats and liberals and all that is two reasons. Yes, number one, yes, is that, yes, they are on average, okay, on average, yes, prone to more emotional, irrational decision making. So this is very true. You can show a woman the crying puppy on TV, for instance, and it will hit them on average. Again, I know people say, no, I'm a female and doesn't do that to me. I'm generalizing here because we're understanding why on average, okay? Okay. Anyways. So that's part of it. And obviously, as we know, Democrats and liberals tend to be very good with emotional, irrational decision-making. That's number one. I think there's a secondary reason, though, and this is another aspect I brought up earlier, actually, of testosterone, which is that testosterone tends to breed disagreeability. So they've done social studies on this, right? And higher testosterone males tend to be the person that will stand up in the group and challenge the status quo, right? This is why, high testosterone men are the ones who lead rebellions, both physically, both peacefully and in the other sense throughout history. It's a fact, right? Testosterone breeds disagreeability. And this is why very often in a just kind of a truly traditional relationship, the woman becomes submissive to the man. It's a testosterone thing, right? But in a political context, what that means is that whereas high testosterone men on average will be disagreeable and stand up to the system, women tend to be much more agreeable, right? They kind of want to maintain the status quo. They want to fit in. They want to basically preserve the current state of things more often. They're less likely, less willing to want to kind of stand up and rebel and be disagreeable. And when you think about it, to be a conservative in this culture these days is a disagreeable thing to do, right? You got to face controversy. People are going to be happy. People are going to be mad at you. They're going to come for you, right? So, and like I said, it's a testosterone thing on average to want to rebel against that. Now, obviously, there are plenty of women who also stand up to the system, but again, we're talking generally speaking. So that's the other reason. Now, with that said, I would say both of those things could be malleable if you played your cards correctly. Because if women are more prone, to emotional, decision-making and emotional appeals when it comes to rhetoric and all that different stuff, then why don't conservatives just get better with emotional appeals than liberals? It's not easy to do, but it's not impossible. That's true. And then, secondarily, that also means that in a situation where if the country were to become conservative again, yes, in theory, it would be women who would trend more conservative because they would just want to maintain the status quo because of the agreeability versus disagreeability thing that is correlated with estrogen versus testosterone. So those are the two reasons. And again, you know, not to get super complicated here, but there is social science that talks about both of this. So, you know, I'm not just making these things up. This is real. That's why women in general tend to be more Democrat. Is like I said, emotionality and agreeability. Those two reasons. But anyways, all right, let us get finished up here with... All right, these will be our last super chats, guys. Let me read them, and then we'll call it a night here. Omar for $5. Thank you very much. Omar says, I thought I had ADHD, and then I realized I was just bored and maybe a bit lazy. Lol. Thank you for the $5, Omar. And exactly. Very often, the reason why men get kind of, like, antsy is because they don't have something to do. They don't know what to do, right? They don't really have a purpose. The school system does a very bad job of giving them a purpose because everything in school is boring and stupid for us very often. So exactly. But if you were like that as a kid, instead of just saying, okay, well, we need to stimulate your brain more and you need to find something to do and you need to be more, you need to work harder, whatever. If that happened when you were a kid, they would give you hardcore narcotics. They would literally give you narcotics. Evil. It's completely evil. So, Burgundy Blue for $5 says, what are your thoughts on AI-generated porn and its potential effects on relationships, dating, and the future of humanity? Well, AI-generated porn is completely evil, and, you know, there's going to be a lot of deep fakes made of just prominent people, and you know what's going to happen, right? The people are going to try to blackmail each other, not even by finding real revenge porn. They're just going to find deep fake porn. But with that said, I don't know if AI will necessarily even make the problem all that much worse, because you are the epidemic of online porn is already what is destroying relationships, dating, and the future of humanity. You know, it's been happening long before AI, and it's been destroying brains long before AI. So I don't know how deep the effect of AI is necessarily going to be on it. I think the AI thing's more so going to be used for try to blackmail and deepfake and mislead people. But, you know, in terms of how addicted a lot of men are to porn, it's already basically the worst it can get. I don't know how much worse it'll make it. I think that porn in general is just the problem. You know, people want to talk about AI porn. Hey, well, AI is going to make... I think the problem is just online porn as a whole. You know? It's like that addiction in many men's brains, and I think every guy our age has been through it at some point. Maybe probably still... A lot of them still go through it, right? I think that itself is the problem. AI maybe is just a new genre of it, but the problem is very fundamental, and I don't know how much it'll even honestly change that. But thank you for the $5, Burgundy Blue. I appreciate it very much. All right, let's get wrapped up here on our super chats. The most annoying people in the world are girl bosses, and that comes from $2 from Dollar for Dollar. This is very true. Nobody likes a girl boss. All you females out there, no one wants a girl boss, okay? Truthfully, if it weren't for diversity rules, no one wants to hire a girl boss. No one wants to certainly date a girl boss. No man worth his salt is going to want that in his life. So just don't be that, you know? Just be a nice woman. Just be a nice... Truly, just be a nice, agreeable woman. Like, you know, it's a... I'm not going to say anything else. Okay. Thank you for the $2, Dollar for Dollar. I appreciate it. All right, last one here. Gianna for $2 says, in my opinion, women should be submissive to virtuous men. Well, this is my opinion too, you know, and obviously it requires men to be virtuous, right? I don't think women should just be submissive to bad or terrible man, but yeah, you know, in a truly traditional relationship or marriage or family or whatever it is, you know, I'm old school too, and I'm also a Christian, and that's what the Bible teaches, which is that, yeah, man is a head of a family, head of a household, and he ultimately is the leader there. And that used to be common sense. That there used to be something that all of human society across every country on earth believed, which is that men are supposed to be the leaders and providers and heads of households and heads of tribe and heads of community and all that. But, you know, you say that now and it's a radical opinion. It's a controversial opinion. It's cancelable to say that now. You know, it's just, you know how it is. You know how it is, but it's completely true. Completely true. And that's just nature, by the way. If you were to restart human civilization tomorrow, or if things ever truly got tough in this country, and frankly, when things do get tough, the natural dynamic plays out. You know, that's just how it is, right? That's nature. That's God's design. However you want to see it, it's undeniably true. But, you know, gynocentrism, what can we say? It's now it's, you're not allowed to hold that opinion, right? You're not allowed to hold that opinion. Anyways, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to all of our super chatters here tonight. We will be live again unless something substantial happens tomorrow. Like I said, I'm trying to do the schedule of Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So unless something substantial happens tomorrow, we'll probably be live on Wednesday, but stay tuned because maybe we will be live tomorrow. I don't know. But thank you to everyone who tuned in. Be sure to leave a like before you go. Consider joining the channel membership at the link down in the description for exclusive content perks and to support the channel. And until next time, have a very good night. Alpha moves only. God bless. Be safe and peace.
Okay, I just want to make this little video today because it's a little concerning. I'm seeing a lot of anti-blackness in general. Like a lot of anti-blackness from the Asians, okay? You know, they're talking about Asian hate, but I think it's more like black hate, okay? And I just want to point something out that, you know, the original Japanese was black. Right here, here's a picture. These are clearly African features on these indigenous people. And the story goes that in 25 BC, a ship from Africa, from a Hukong Kinte, who was one of the African kings of Ghana, sailed the ship all the way from Ghana, and he got lost. He was trying to explore the New World, and he ended up in Japan. So in Japan, they made a colony, and it was the first Japanese Afro colony in the world. So these Afro-Ghanaians, they started interbreeding with the Japanese women. And so they created the first black Japanese population. So if we use the one drop rule, according to now, the calculation would be that actually Japanese is around 45 to 65% black. So I just wanted to let y'all know and give y'all a little history lesson to correct it, because United States schools don't show this, but a lot of Japanese carry the black gene, and so do China. So these Chinese and Asians, we should be supporting each other, because Chinese are black, Japanese are black, and the whole Asia is black.